Good afternoon, folks, and welcome to the Pervasive Media Studio Lunchtime Talk. So these talks are live every Friday at 1 p.m, both here in the building and live online. So whether you're in Bristol or you're far away, you can join in the conversation. My name is Martin O'Leary. I'm the studio community lead here. I'm a white man in my late 30s with long hair and a beard, wearing a sort of beigey brown woolly jumper today. Every Friday, we throw open the doors of the Pervasive Media Studio for Open Studio Friday, where we offer you the chance to spend some time in the space, hot desking alongside our residents and staff from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. So especially big welcome to those of you who are new to the studio. Can I see hands up, anyone who's new to the studio? Welcome. So this bit is for you. What is the Pervasive Media Studio? We're a diverse and collaborative community exploring creativity and technology, everything from comedy to coding and product development to performance art. We're a partnership between Watershed, where we are right now, the University of the West of England and the University of Bristol, and we're funded by Arts Council England. And what we do is we offer studio space, desks, meeting rooms, events and opportunities, all for free to our residents as part of a spirit of generosity and mutual exchange. And we're a space for people to take risks with embryonic ideas and to make some time for collaboration. So quick bit of housekeeping. Feel free to move around, make a cup of tea, grab a drink from the kitchen. Please don't use the microwave because it interferes with the induction loop system. We have a quiet space just through this wall to my left. If you need to take a break at any point, just pop in there. No need to make a fuss about it. Fire exits are at either end of the studio on the far side. We do not have a fire drill plan, so if you hear the alarm, that is real. The studio team will direct you in that direction. And there are accessible toilets, and I don't see any babies, but there is also baby change in the corridor over there next to the kitchen. There will be a Q&A at the end of the talk. If you're watching online, please pop your questions into the YouTube chat. Lowerton will pull those out. If you're in the building, raise your hand. We'll do it the old-fashioned way. You can get news on all of our future talks by heading to watershed.co.uk/studio, at PM Studio UK on Twitter, at Pervasive Media Studio at mastodon.social on Mastodon, or at Pervasive Media Studio on Instagram. So also today we have some surveys for you to fill out. If you're in the space, there are some QR codes on the wall, or you can ask Lowerton and he will email you a link. If you're online, then we'll drop the URL into the YouTube chat. These help us to think about future talks and also mostly to make the case to funders for the work that we're doing. So please, if you can, fill them out. Our speaker for today is Joyann Boyce, a studio resident and the founder and CEO of Inclued, a company that helps marketers connect with their audience by spotting and removing unconscious biases in digital content. That was written to be not to be read aloud. Today, she's going to be talking about AI and puppies and about how they both need training and nurturing and how they can both develop biases and undesirable behaviours. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to Joyann.
Hey. So go on a journey with me with this one. It might feel like I'm stretching every now and again, mainly because, my first confession, I don't own a dog. Never had a puppy. Don't really like them. So, all right, who has a puppy in the room or has had a dog in any time of their life? Do not be offended, please. So, is AI a puppy? How I got on this question, in my work, I see bias everywhere. It's this thing that I just can't not see. Someone says an idea to do with AI, I'm like, I can see all the ways that's corrupt. And they're like, no, it's amazing. And I'm like, why can't people get the good things and the bad things and see that they can live co and co and you need to work it out? So the puppy analogy came about. Now, again, I do not own a dog, do not like them. Are puppies cute? Hands up if you say yes. Okay, we've got one stand, okay. We're on the same page. They have teeth. They roll around in the mud. They bite things, they jump, they tear up your things, I hear. The people who have valuable goods, they have ripped up clothing. They have done all these horrible things and you still think they're cute? Why? Now, on the AI aspect, is AI useful? Yes, AI is helpful. We have seen it, especially in the use cases with ChatGPT, help so many people on so many things and have so many iterations. However, the bias baked within it when it's doing those things is kind of like a puppy biting you. You kind of need to address it at the time that it's happening, or it's going to continue, it's going to grow. And you're going to have a puppy turn into, that was a horrible analogy, Joyann, stop, hold on. A puppy turn into a dog that you do not like. I was going to say something else really terrible, you don't want to know. But in my research, looking at puppies and the way they grow and develop, I saw a lot of similarities with AI. Anyone here, I know, I said I wasn't going to ask the audience many questions, but I keep doing it. In terms of dog years and human years, general consensus, everyone kind of gets it, like one of our years is like, no, one of their years is 7 of our years. So I feel like that's what's happening with AI. One of our years is 7 of AI years, the way we're looking at it, but AI is still in its like early infancy, but we've been doing it for a long time. So one of the main things when you first get a puppy, I am told, in the first 3 to 17 weeks, you have to introduce this puppy to everything and anything. You have to socialize it to not be afraid, to not be fearful, like introduce it to your kids so it gets used to, these are the formative weeks. And I'm just like, wow. 3 to 17 weeks doesn't feel like a lot of time for someone to know, or, ooh, okay. 3 to 17 weeks doesn't feel like a lot of time for an animal to know not to bite a human, I personally think. And I'm just like, those critical years, those critical weeks are really important in the continuing relation. It doesn't like me today. Let's see, no? Yeah, keep imagining puppies in your brain. Those critical weeks are really important in the development and the training of the puppy. But when we're thinking about AI, if we apply that same 3 to 17 years and think about, have we actually introduced these models into all aspects? Or have we solely thought of them in single purpose use? And we saw a lot of this with when ChatGPT came out. For those who do not know, ChatGPT is a free, now paid resource. Free, now paid resource of OpenAI, which is an institute that's researching AI and its development. And one of the things they learned very quickly when they exposed it to the general public is in those first, not even, I think it was 5 days, they found ways to make it horrible. They found ways to turn that puppy into a pit bull in no time at all. But I feel like we've been here before. On the whole journey of AI, we've been doing this a while, and that thing keeps happening. Why aren't we aware that when we release this puppy into the world, it's biting people? Why are we not considering the biases in it? So what type of dog will AI be in the future? This screen does not like me, does it? It's funny, no matter how advanced we get in technology, the key instinct is still to wiggle the wire. It's just like, oh, if I blow on it or if I tap it twice. Yeah, so what type of dog will AI grow up to be? I am saying right now that AI is still within those 3 to 17 weeks. Where as much as people want to say that it's a full-grown dog, I don't think it is. I think it's still a puppy being exposed to all the things, and we're still having to actively check it, train it, check it, train it. But one of the things I feel some sectors of the AI, I'm not going to say all of them, are ignoring is how to start planning for that from before you release it into the world. Like the people who've had puppies, you introduce it into your house, you're like, hey, this is a door, this is a cat, this is a human. Again, I don't know. But then you take it outside, then you take it into a mall, and you stage it. We're missing those steps when we're looking at AI. We're missing a lot of things because the developers, the creators of the tools that are out there are missing that no matter what their intention is, no matter the context use that they're going to have it, it's all being impacted by the bias. And I'm saying the bias rather than the bias of the individuals because it fluctuates. When you're creating an AI model, let's say we're going to create a model to count how many chairs are in this room. We can be like, okay, this is a chair. This is what it looks like. I think it's a chair because it has 4 legs. The model thinks it's a chair because it has 4 legs, but someone else is like, no, chairs have 3. It's like, oh, we have different perspectives. Why do we have different perspectives? Because we've grown up in different ways. The way that we're creating that model is impacted by our own personal biases on how we see the world. if we don't have that conversation, if we don't start with the bias dividing everything that we're assuming, we're going to end up with impact and be like, why does it not recognize a chair with one leg? Again, I'm using chairs, but I'm literally meaning people's lives, because there's a lot of tools and products that are being implemented, and we've seen it over history, being implemented in our everyday decisions. I didn't chuck it. I've done this talk before, and I've chucked in the scary stuff about how Black and minoritized people are getting longer sentences in prison because of AI, and da-da-da-da-da-da. Type in something, and AI has got a bias towards it, and it's being used to make it faster, make it speedy. But a lot of the time, everyone's surprised. And I'm just like, how are you surprised? You trained the puppy, and you're surprised it doesn't know what the world looks like. You kept it in your house for 4 weeks, and then you let it out, and it bit someone, and you're surprised. Why? Because they're not thinking about it. Now, I was joking earlier. I made up this equation in 2020. I don't know if I can put my name on it yet. You know, it's a bunch of lines. But I think it's really important to, when you're creating bias, same way when you're introducing a puppy into the world, to start creating AI, not creating bias, to start with the bias in the room, to start with it on the table, to start thinking about all the ways and the worst case scenarios. So with our tool, Include AI, we have a scenario that we practice. Whenever we have a new idea to make it better in some way, better in our own opinions, we're like, okay, what would Trump do? How would he mess it up? What's the worst case scenario? And we all say on the table, and we're like, okay, if that worst case scenario was to happen, what are we missing to mitigate that, to correct that, to stop that happening? And if we can't stop it happening, what is our response? I've spoken to many people who develop AI tools. They don't have those conversations. They stick on the happy side. They stick on, it's cute, it's cuddly, it's a puppy, it's super helpful, you know, it's just biting you, it's just nibbling on you, it's just, you know, you're drawing blood, it's okay, don't worry about it. You know, or they hide it and they're like, oh yeah, this tool solely helps you create copy. Don't worry about bias, it's not, we don't need to think about it. This tool solely helps you to select a chair. Don't worry about anything else. Don't worry about accessibility. Don't worry about it. We're just going to hide it under there. It's doing this one thing. But no matter the product or the context that you're using that AI tool in, bias will always be present. And you always have to consider, whom is it helpful to? The same with dogs. Again, I am reaching with these dog analogies, but dogs can be super helpful. I would not want to encounter either one of these, but one is very helpful. One is a guide dog, helping someone, helping a human through their day, keeping them safe. Another is an army dog, which is trained to do things. Do not search those videos, they're very scary. But they both started their journey in the same manner. They both started as puppies. They both started in a way where the people who were there for those key 3 to 17 weeks were able to shape that journey. And that's the same instance when you think of any AI. So in regards to ChatGPT, Elon Musk was involved, so I won't even say anything about that. But in regards to who's involved in those early 3 to 17 weeks, in our case, it might be 3 to 17 years, shapes the whole perspective of how that's going to look. Now, I'm whizzing through, but I'm curious to know, anyone here created or part of an AI team or tool or thing? 2. Okay, do you mind what? I'll try not to say all the biased things in it.
Using Midjourney to create artworks.
Okay.
Training face detectors for BBC and Disney productions, including training on aliens and robots using material provided by the production company and also images from the internet. I was very thorough about like helmets, because like you can't really get space helmets, so we did like motorcycle helmets and all that as well.
Cool. Okay. So both.
So a lot more advanced than my stuff then.
I was like, image generation and analysis on a wide scale. So in that, sorry, it cracked me up. In that image generation aspect, one of the main things that's happening now to combat that is Google released a new scale for skin tone. Because the way AI sees images is in pixels, and little tiny dots. However, up until 2021, the majority of models that were used for image detection were using skin tone scales that had 5 shades in it. 3 of those shades would be applied to a white individual and 2 for everybody else. And I was just like, how did they just, I don't know if I am being biased by looking at it and be like, that seems like a very obvious puppy that you're training to bite everybody but these 3 people. And they don't see it. So now Google's implemented a 10-shade scale. So in your cases, in terms of generating something that is totally creative, abstract, it has a wider reach. But what is abstract in a Western context towards abstract in any other region could be as long as a piece of string. In regards to facial-ish recognition, I don't know how bad it would be in that case, but I'm not going to comment because it's the BBC. Generally, in regards to facial recognition, you can have situations where in America, which is the go-to for a lot of these scenarios, someone was wrongly accused for robbing a bank, arrested in front of his children, and had to go on a 3 to 4 year journey to really get that sorted out, just because they're like, oh, you look like this person. This is the other thing, we cannot blindly trust AI. This is why I say it's a puppy. You will not trust a puppy to fetch you a stick. And if it brings you back a branch, you said fetch a stick, that is wood. Technically it's right, but you question it. We need to question AI the same way we question puppies. We need to question it in those manners, because in that scenario, that gentleman literally held the photo up. Everyone could see it wasn't him, but like, no, the computer said it was you. And the police blindly followed it. Anywho, I was just exploring scenarios, but we've seen the AI landscape develop a lot over the recent years. It used to just be a few areas. But I want to take you on a journey about how all these puppies are bad in some way or another. For anyone who doesn't know me, again, all my work is around bias, so I try to make it light because it's really depressing otherwise. So in text generation and text creativity, a lot of history is written by the ones who won. So when you're asking generative AI to create a story or a narrative, and you didn't ask it to describe those people who are winning or benefiting or so on, it tends to follow the winner is a light-skinned individual or a white man, and the loser is not, because that's where it's pulling from. It's pulling from the historical information that has been fed. In regards to video, this one's an interesting one. I haven't seen any clear on it, but I know a lot of the AI tools that are training on video content are pulling from YouTube. And it is a good data set. However, I would question if they are using the ranks and comments to then reference that data. Because gamers, for example, on YouTube who publish their streams from their other platforms, gamers who happen to be women get a lot of down rating, a lot of hate speech, a lot of things that would, if you put those two things together, their video content and the analysis of their comments, you'd be like, oh, these videos are bad quality. So if you're going to generate it, don't generate it like that. In regards to image, as I mentioned with the skin tone aspect, that's one of the main areas. Image generation, there are tools. There's a fun tool that came about, I don't know if it still exists, where to make up for the lack of darker skin tone individuals in data sets, they said we will fake generate faces for you. Does not solve the problem, because all those faces had European features just with darker skin tones. I was like, okay, but they sold it as a company. And also on the image aspect, I don't know if anyone's heard of the platform This Person Does Not Exist. It's a platform that you can keep pressing the space bar and it will make a fake face of around, and you would think this is a real person. 2 years ago, I wanted to get a random sample of these fake faces and just be like, okay, this is someone who represents as Asian, but obviously it's a fake person. They're not Asian, a white person, a black person. It took me 3 months to get 4 black faces. I had to enlist the internet. After a period of time, it just started serving me black and white photos, because it's just like, we give up. The AI was like, what more do you want from us? And then the code one is interesting, because it's, as far as I can see the debate, I am not a strong coder, I know a tiny bit of Python. The debate is down to ownership. That's kind of happening. Like if you ask AI to generate code and that code is bad or does something bad in some way, whose fault is it? Because where did it pull the source code from to create that code to help the coder? But then they're putting it in their platform, and this cycle of loop of bad code continues. 3D, not yet. Haven't found any bias there. There will be. And then speech, in terms of that, have anyone realized with your phones, Siri, Apple Siri, Google, Alexa, they all tend to have women names. Because somewhere along the line, everyone thought, if we want someone who can't say no to us, and is a voice-activated item, has to be a woman's voice. Funny enough, the person who did Siri, I think she gave up like all of her rights to her voice forever. It's really weird. It's like, how would you do that? But then every time we're using these tools, we're helping to train these models. But if they're not paying attention to accents and gender, again, if I have to say to my phone, make sure I pause to make sure it doesn't actually happen, call 999, depending on my accent, depending on my voice, will depend on whether it actually goes through or not, because of the training data, because of how they're building these platforms. And then we'll just leave other. But as all those areas of AI generating is like a herd of puppies, they can all come from the same cute mom and dad, if puppy dogs' dads are cute, but be trained in so many different ways that the impact could be the puppy bites you, it doesn't. Or the puppy likes you and hates everyone else. Or in a real world scenario, the puppy is sexist, racist, ableist, any of the isms within that 3 to 12 week time span. Fun little experiment I did. I asked AI to compare itself to a child and to a dog. And it came up with its own. I was just like, you know what? This is really interesting, because one of my friends was debating the current conversational AI we have right now is a lot more like a child. And I was like, come on. I can, this sounds weird, I can talk to a child, a 5-year-old, and eventually they'll start to like me. I can't talk to AI and make it like me at any point or make it beneficial for me without diving into the code and development and all that stuff. So how is it like a child? To me, it's more like a dog. But it was really interesting that using AI to identify its own issues, it's fun, and it's a nice little rabbit hole anyone wants to go down to. If you want to type in with ChatGPT, how are you biased? It will tell you, and it will go deeper. And then eventually it will start saying, we cannot expose this, sorry. I was like, damn it. So the comparisons, the learning rate. So this is where AI wins. It can learn faster than a dog, faster than a child. But it can also learn bad things faster than a dog, faster than a child. So harder to untrain that. The ability to reason, limited to the program's algorithms. I think that's also limited, not necessarily to the algorithms, but to the creators. So however the developers' communication skills, reasoning skills are, maybe it's limited on that, or the data set itself as well. But dogs lack, this is what I argue, anyone who has a dog, they lack complex reasoning. I feel like all the videos I've seen on TikTok to really study about this, the dogs seem to be able to talk to us now. Is that not reasoning? Like they call their owners different names and press buttons. I feel like that's complex. A child develops on its time. I think the biggest difference between the child and the AI is the level of independence. I don't see within this fictional 3 to 17 years AI getting to the point of any form of independence. I can see it getting to a point of somewhat survival. Like if you program it, complete this task, it will not stop till that task is complete, but it will not be independent, is my personal opinion. Emotional intelligence. That's the bit we don't want to happen. That's the bit the movies are based on. If AI gets emotional intelligence, similar to what I say with a dog with emotional intelligence, it might like you, but it might bite and attack everybody else. I keep having moments of really terrible things to do with dogs, and I'm so many dog lovers in the room. But a child develops emotional intelligence over time. And in regards to the lifespan, this is one that's really interesting because AI is saying that, hey, our lifespan is forever. We can go on as long as we like, and has limited the lifespan of the dog and the child. But AI that was developed in the 60s, when the whole Turing question and all that came about, couldn't do what ChatGPT does now. So I feel like it has a limited lifestyle, and it's hopefully trying to live longer, but we will see. However, to end things off, my question to the room is, whenever you're using AI in whatever fields, whatever the ways you're engaging with it, how can you apply that equation to what you're using it for? And then make a decision on impact. If the impact is low, if you are having it write you a tweet about something you couldn't be bothered to read, really try not to swear, couldn't be bothered to read, then impact is low. Someone might say, hey, that's not what the article said. You're like, oh no, delete. On the other side, you could be asking it to write you an article which someone did and then publish that article to journals, and then they found out because they left the prompt in there that it was written by ChatGPT and get fired. Then your journalistic reputation is down the drain. So whatever the impact is, really consider that when you're using AI to create, and as we're stepping into this somewhat still formative years of the tools out there, bias is there. It's always there. That is me. Puppies are cute. Okay, I somewhat agree, but I'm not going to get one. And then, but yeah, that's it.
All right, well, we have plenty of time for questions. Anybody in the room got one to start us off?
I remember you studied the UV data science degree. What are the uses of data science in your company? Like, for example, maybe facial recognition or text recognition?
So using text recognition in regards to identifying whether sentences are gendered, sexist, ableist, but the problem that we're facing is back to the data set issue. So a lot of the work that we're doing in trying to build AI to reduce the bias in AI goes back to us building the data set, and the cycle continues because all the data sets out there, when we looked into the labeling of everything had to be very extreme when it came to text. It had to be very much, oh, you had a nice day, or this person is a fucking bitch, and that was it. Everything in between it didn't understand. So that's how we've been exploring. That's why I did my research, my data science degree, and master's in.
Anybody else?
Hi. I don't work in the field at all, so I'm sort of naive on this. I've just read what I've read about it. What I've picked up is that AI is all about pattern recognition. You train your you train it on a database, and it's bound to have bias. So it seems to me that in terms of the impact, there are some contexts where that impact won't be acceptable, and you'll never get rid of the bias, and therefore you just shouldn't use AI in that context. As an example, I'm still skeptical about driverless cars because society doesn't accept, it won't accept as acceptable the possibility that a driverless car will kill a person. And therefore, I'm skeptical about it. And that's a context, therefore, that it shouldn't be used.
So this shouldn't be used. I have little faith in humanity to really not do it. It's like we invented fire, and we're like, fire is really useful, but we still burn shit down. So that one of like, in this context, it just shouldn't be used. I don't believe that we're going to learn from our mistakes and not do that. In regards to the driverless cars example, yeah, it runs over people who are darker skinned. They want to sugarcoat it in every way. It can't recognize certain things. The delay is too long before it can reduce that. So, but is that going to stop people wanting convenience? No. But if they can start, and if, say, with the driverless cars, they can build a separate model to their whole model of looking at, okay, can we focus on how this driverless car would operate if everyone in the world had darker skin tones? Let's learn from that because we're aware that's a bias, and then start working on it. But capitalism, they're focused on the fastest thing out, and the fastest thing out is using the data sets that they already have. I don't think any context is not going to be used. And that's why I think this equation for me is really important, because if it's going to be used in every context, I'd rather you say, we know that's bad, and we know it's terrible, and we're working on it, than oops. So yeah, I don't think they're not going to use it in any context.
Hiya. Yeah, it kind of strikes me that looking at bias is maybe like an aspect of AI safety and security. It's my understanding that this is something that's kind of grown in recent years. But I was just wondering, this is just a factual question, really. Are you seeing more kind of money coming into this area of security and safety around AI? Or is it still that the overwhelming majority is just kind of full steam ahead, like you say, what's the short-term gains that we can get from this? I was just interested to know that.
So the research has definitely grown. One of my inspirations is Dr. Joy Bolowini, and she did some research in 2018 where she looked at all the facial recognition technology currently being sold to like the army and so forth, which came from about 4 companies, and put them on blast, essentially. There was like, your accuracy rate for Black women and darker skinned women is below what's acceptable. That led to Amazon with pulling off their facial recognition from police use. So there is work happening, but on the counter side of that, Dr. Timothy, I'm gonna say she got fired, she legally can't say it, from Google when she found huge issues with their models and what's going on. So it's this aspect of they're investing in it and they're aware of it, but I don't know if it's stopping anyone commercially. I don't know of anything that OpenAI is doing, like myself, to say that they've balanced the whole thing, but I know some things in the way that I see them approaching ChatGPT is that they're trying to learn as it's becoming bad. But again, I have no faith in humanity. I don't think you can move as fast as humanity is bad. If that makes, like, in the time, I think it took 24 hours, and they were asking it how to like make bombs and stuff like that. And I was just like, you didn't. They're trying to, oh, then we won't do that, and then we won't. And it's like, by the time they've done that, it's too late. But there is a lot of research going on. There's a lot of interesting things. One documentary I'd recommend is on Netflix called Coded Bias, and that kind of highlights a lot of stuff happening. There's some stuff in the UK as well around facial recognition, which is the hottest of all the topics.
Ruth, did you?
Oh, that was kind of my question, so that's fine. Yeah.
Anybody else then?
Yeah, so I was wondering, with your work as a CEO and your organization, like, what does that look like in terms of this bias issue and how people are responding, and what do those conversations sound like, and what are you kind of, I guess, day to day doing with those companies as clients and stuff?
So day to day, it's generally helping them figure out how to implement bias detection within whatever their marketing process is. I stick within marketing because it's in terms of the impact is somewhat low compared to the rest of the use cases for AI. The impact in getting this stuff wrong in terms of representation and inclusion is it's not low. You lose $4 billion, which is what H&M lost when they had that campaign that had coolest monkey in the jungle on a little black boy. Now, our technology is looking at ways of identifying the word monkey, identifying someone with darker skin, and saying, hey, you should not publish this content. They can still choose to do it. That's the one thing that we cannot stop, because again, faith in humanity. But we can have the data, because right now, a lot of the things that's happening in the marketing sector is content that's going out there causing harm, and they're like, oh, we didn't know. And there's no way to prove people wasn't aware that this thing had a negative impact. So that's what a lot of our work looks like in terms of what we're doing day to day, and then the model that we're trying to build.
Yes, Joe.
Hi. I'm going to try and extend your dog analogy even further, but might not make sense when I say it out loud, so bear with me. So I was thinking about our relationship to dogs, and in your examples of, when we might get bitten by them or they're kind of dangerous, feels like that's when we are kind of trying to live alongside an animal in a way that serves us, rather than thinking about our relationship to them in a more equal way. Mm-hmm. And so I guess I'm wondering whether there are ways that we can learn about how we might want to live alongside or with artificial intelligence in a way that kind of reflects how we might learn to live better alongside other forms of intelligence in the world, where it's not just about a kind of human domination, I guess, but more about like AI is different in some ways to us, and so how can we work with that rather than kind of use it to do our dirty work?
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
It's an interesting one because I think there's an aspect of common acceptance, like generally across the world, we're all aware that dogs are and they exist. In some cultures, they're like outside animals, you know, we don't engage with them. And in other cultures, it's like your best friend, they eat off your plate. But when those two cultures, meet, they're like, okay, that's what you do and this is what I do, and everyone's kind of happy with it. What I feel is challenging with AI is that there's not a common acceptance of what it is yet. And I think the media has a lot to play in that, in the way that it's portraying it to the general public, to the general world. And that's going to cause issues because in terms of everyday use, there's either, from some other research I've done, there's either complete distrust of it or complete reliance on it. And it's like, oh yeah, if the AI says it, it's fine, but we need to all think of it as we do think of dogs. I think that would be the best way. On another aspect of that, which is why I was using this dog analogy, dogs were free before us and they lived wild and happy, and we domesticated them and made them into these things. I'm not saying AI could become this thing and be free and happy and wild, but there was a beauty in seeing animals do something that we didn't know and letting them explore. The only thing that is difficult when it comes to technology and it doing that is that people's lives are actually at risk. So, yeah, I don't know how we can explore and have that freedom that we allow, you know, a dog to run in a park and play. I'm like, oh, look, it can do this trick and we learned from it, but not put people at risk. That's the challenging balance. But I honestly think where we should go to next is having a common general, like even people who don't work in AI or do anything with it, but a common understanding that, hey, this is not the be all and end all. This is not going to build, this is not going to replace every job, I say, because it might, but it will change, it will adapt. I think the same way we had training for older individuals to learn how to use their phone when people started rolling off from, is the same thing we should do with AI tools. Like have people come in and be like, okay, this is how you engage with it, this is how you get it to do this, instead of just forcing it into their lives. Like we would with a guide dog. Oh, the dog analogy really keeps going.
Any more questions for anyone? No? Well, I'm going to ask one of mine. So you're talking a lot about bias, and you know that's, I guess my understanding of bias is always like there's some perfect neutral version of this, and then there's a bias which takes you away from that. So do you really believe in that perfect neutral thing, or do you think that's a possibility, or is it just something to aim for, or is that like, if we get there, are we just going to find that that's someone's perspective?
I don't think neutrality is there in any way in regards to technology. I think we should all bake cakes to benefit ourselves and then come together and have a cake party. I think that if we intentionally and awarely build something knowing that there's bias in it, that we can protect the rest of the world from that. I think that's the key of recognizing and identifying it. But completely removing it, I don't think that's possible. But you can safeguard against it. So I think that's where I lean on there's a lot of work happening about trying to make things completely gender neutral or completely accessible or so forth. But one person or one team is not going to be able to identify every single bias out there. And then when you take it out of the context of the country that is being built into another country, you have a whole other one. So as long as people are trying to safeguard against it and actively aware of it, I think is the key to creating safer tech.
All right. Well, I think we might leave it there then. Thank you, Joyann.
Thanks.
So before you all go, I do want to remind you about the surveys. We've got the QR codes around the space. You can get Lawatim to email you a link if you would like a link emailed to you. If you're online, the URL is in the chat now.